Hello and welcome. President Akufo-Addo has charged the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, to make improving the lives of and living standards of Ghanaians his major priority during his second term in office. The president said this when he swore in Mr. Ofori-Atta into office, following his approval by Parliament.
He provided weak, faltering economy. He highlighted what public service means to him and outlined the plans he has to help revitalize the Ghanaian economy and restore it to the kinds of growth and expansion witnessed before the onset of COVID-19. Mr. Finance Minister, I congratulate you heartily on your appointment, and I'm sure you know that the Ghanaian people are expecting you, working with you over the course of the next 4 years, as we seek to protect our progress and transform Ghana for all, the theme of the MPP 2020 manifesto, the sacred compact that binds us to the Ghanaian people. Indeed, you have your work cut out for you, even though our economy, despite the pandemic, was still one of the few in the world that recorded positive GDP growth for 2020. Ultimately, what the people of Ghana are expecting is a visible improvement in their standard of living. That is an increase in real wages for working people, an enhancement of the incomes of farmers and fisherfolk, and a rise in profits for businesses. So talk of good macroeconomic management, fiscal responsibility, and GDP growth has to reflect that goal if the talk is to be meaningful. As I indicated to your colleague ministers at their swearing in, the Ghanaian people have given us 4 more years to do more for them. So as you assume your position in government, I urge you to provide leadership that will ensure that the work on which we are embarked benefits the progress of our voted for us. Once again, I congratulate you on your appointment and wish you Godspeed in the discharge of the home. I thank you.
Well, the Finance Minister promised to do everything on his part to protect the public purse.
Mr. President, we could not organize labor, CSO, employers, the media and faith-based organizations, to all these stakeholders for their continuing support towards our journey to building a Ghana beyond aid, a prosperous and self-confident Ghana in charge of her economic destiny. Mr. President, I assure you that I'll continue to serve with integrity and to protect the public purse. We will implement your vital, and we are not naive regarding the effort required. Like Nehemiah, we continue to remain resolute in the face of this global pandemic and skepticism. We know our Lord will give us success as he did in times of Nehemiah and has done for us since we came into government in 2017 with 2 fish and 5 hands to the good work which lies ahead for us. J.B. Duncan reminds us, charted the course for this Ghana beyond aid. The nation looks to your leadership. Amu said, I said, Mr. President, we are committed to helping build a Ghana. Thank you, and may God bless our homeland, Ghana.
Well, to one of our top stories, the CEO of the Chamber of Petroleum Consumers, COPEC Ghana, Duncan Amoam, is raising concerns about government's decision to maintain the chief executive of the National Petroleum Authority, Hassan Tampoli, despite him being a member of Parliament for the Gushegu constituency. According to Duncan of COPEC, he cited correspondence from Hassan Tampoli to the NPA despite his new role as the Member of Parliament. Duncan argues that this breaches the corporate governance laws of public institutions and might be a severe matter of conflict of interest. Duncan Amoa joins us via phone. So, Duncan, we're grateful that you joined us. First of all, you're requesting for a new CEO of the NPA. You say that Hassan Tampoli has no legal ground for holding this particular position. Expatiate your argument proper.
Now, let me say good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. We are minded by precedent. We are also minded by good governance especially in our energy establishments or institutions. You recall that before 2020 elections, the then CEO substantive, Mr. Hassan Tampuli, decided to contest as a member of parliament. One would have expected that he would have resigned to contest that public office, but that was not done. Then, thankfully, he wins and gets sworn in as a representative of the people of Gushegu. The expectation again would have been that he would have given way to another person to also start working in the interest of Ghanaians so that he could focus a lot more on his new role as a parliamentarian representing Gushegu. We say this on the back of the fact that conflict of interest situations would somehow abound. If you look at the fact that NPA would definitely work as a government institution, and where answers are needed by parliamentarians, you would expect the CEO to be in a hurry to provide these answers. If the same CEO doubles as an MP, without necessarily going to the committee on members, on members of parliament engaged in profit business, then there's probably some breach there. If we indeed would have to keep Mr. Tampuli in office, the NPA board, then he would necessarily have to go back to parliament to obtain permission, which expressly checks from the committee on members engaged in business has not been done. And so you wonder on what basis we still continue to have him hold board meetings, sign official correspondence of the authority, whereas he has now moved on to become the member of parliament. This is just a matter of precedent, and if we are not careful, the precedent being set could become a very dangerous one for our corporate governance institutions within the country in the days ahead.
Well, but Duncan, we do know that some ministers of state hold positions within the ministry, despite the fact that they're even members of parliament. We've had the Speaker of Parliament raise concerns over this matter. But as it stands now, one could argue, is this a matter of the law or a matter of moral standing?
One, you are dealing with precedent, you are dealing with conventions, and then you are dealing with legality. We have cited issues of conflict of interest. One, if you maintain a position as the substantive CEO for NPA, that attracts a certain income. And then being a parliamentarian also attracts a certain income. And so if an individual is receiving double pay from, our public salary structure, that clearly is a conflict of interest situation, because even for parliamentarians who get appointed as ministers, they have to forfeit or forgo one of these incomes. And so
But do we have on record the fact that, because we do not have on record if indeed these members of parliament and even ministers who double as ministers forfeited aspects of their salaries in that regard?
In fact, that is the law. And if anybody doesn't, they've breached the law. And so it cannot be that they forfeit or they don't forfeit. The law says if you become an MP and then you get appointed as a minister, you definitely take just one salary. And that is why in recent times we've even had a situation where we discussed some MPs that also had, a second salary, and that was a huge, public discourse. We are saying that indeed, once you cross to become the MP representing a certain constituency, also having an oversight duty and responsibility as a parliamentarian over these governmental institutions and agencies. The most you could probably be appointed to is a board position that also becomes more or less a policy directive oversight position. But as substantive CEO, we do think that it breaches every aspect of the law, especially on conflict of interest matters, especially also on the fact that if the authority is to end up paying any incomes to the CEO, he will be getting double salaries, which is also not allowed in public governance systems. And so we think that if you took away the personality, these are precedents that we do not want set. And so the appointing authority should do well in earnest to appoint somebody substantive to work, as opposed to having an individual who owes Parliament a duty to work and also owning himself up as a CEO of a public enterprise, as important as the NPA. We think that these precedents would need to be checked so that in the future it doesn't then become a norm for people to get to Parliament. It will get to a point where all 275 members of Parliament would go on looking for CEO jobs, and you get to Parliament and there's nobody there to legislate.
Have you forwarded your concern to the rightful authorities?
I do believe that we continue to engage every authority necessary, and as these public discourses also drag, some way, somehow, we draw their attention to the fact that the right things would need to be done, and done immediately.
Duncan, we're grateful that he joined us. He's the CEO of COPEC, raising concerns about the maintenance of Hassan Tamponi as the Chief Executive of the National Petroleum Authority. He says it poses grave concerns of conflict of interest. Away from that, Ghana was successful in raising about $3 billion in debt instruments on the international capital market. But the average cost of the bonds is a little above 8%. Analysts say the success of the bond doesn't mean the country investment climate is the best, but rather because the government is desperate for money to finance its budget. We've been getting perspective from investment analyst Michael Kobler, who says the outcome of the latest roadshow may be the best considering the current economic environment.
I'll say that raising money in a post-pandemic period is quite difficult. So for them to have achieved the 3 billion mark is commendable. But don't forget that our target was to raise a $5 billion. But so even though it has been oversubscribed, the reason why probably we did not take the entire $5 billion was because of pricing. Obviously, you do a book build and you have various pricing levels coming through during the pricing of the offer. So you draw the line at a point where you think that you have gotten an interest rate which is sustainable or comparative to what you have raised in the past. If you compare the raise that we got this year, you realize that it's slightly above what we got last year by almost 100 basis points for each of the segments that we are looking at, apart from the zero coupon bond, which is a novelty. So, having said that, our target was to raise 5 billion. If we were subscribed and the pricing was great, we would have picked all the 5 billion. But once we were able to cap at 3.025, it just means that the pricing that came subsequently beyond the 3 billion was ridiculous or couldn't be justified. And that's why we had to stop at 3 billion. So yes, it's a good indicator that yes, investors still have confidence in Ghana, but the reason why we couldn't break in all the 5 billion would definitely be because of pricing.
Well, the Agric Development Bank registered a profit of 65 million cedis, about 194% year-on-year growth for last year. This was as a result of significant growth in its interest income, whilst keeping interest expense down. Charles Nixon Yeboah perused the 2020 financial statement of the only Agric bank in Ghana and has more.
The bank grew all its income lines despite the impact of COVID-19 on businesses. It was one of the few banks that was involved in loans and advancement amid the coronavirus. This was demonstrated in significant growth in interest income, as well as fees and commissions, despite a jump in its bad debt from 15 million cedis to 23 million cedis. Shareholders of the bank will be smiling following the remarkable growth in profit, as earnings per share went up to 24.99 pesos per share from 5.66 pesos in 2019. The bank, importantly, has seen a swift turnaround under the leadership of Dr. John Kofi Mensah. The balance sheet size hit 10.5 billion cedis at the end of December last year, as against 8.3 billion cedis in 2019. For the financial soundness indicators, ADB recorded a liquidity ratio of 117%, but non-performing loans were still high at 34%, though had seen some 6 percentage points drop. The bank, however, is now very stable and stronger.
You're still watching The Marketplace. Tourism is a sector that contributes significantly to any country's gross domestic product. But it doesn't just grow the economy, it creates happy people, which contributes to productivity in the long run. In the following piece, Gipti Andopia highlights a trip to Rwanda in March with 5 things to look out for if you happen to visit Rwanda, and lessons that the sector players in the tourism industry in Ghana can learn from the country, which attracts billions of dollars annually from tourism as compared to Ghana. Here's a report.
The 5 things you should look out for: hills, clean environment, breathtaking natural scenery, parks full of wild animals, and beautiful hotels with smiling attendants. One of the things you can do on a trip is to check out their border control system. The country shares borders with Tanzania, which is visible away, Uganda, and DR Congo. We did exactly that, and we had the privilege of taking some pictures. That's the only thing you might not be lucky to get to do unless you are in a group like us.
When I turn all over to this side, this is DR Congo. They call it the one-stop border post.
In between the journey from the border towns, you'll find Lake Kivu, which is Rwanda's biggest and Africa's 6th, overlooking nearby countries. This town, in Rubavu, has very beautiful hotels like the Nirvana Hotel, at which we made a stop.
So you see, Accra can get very choked, and for us Ghanaians, sometimes we want our peace. So peaceful, and I'm certain that if you make the trip. This is the Nirvana Hotel in London, and I'm inviting you to breathe in this beautiful. Just imagining also that we are looking at DR Congo.
And the Travels summarizes what we saw in this video.
I'm gonna make something great. That's my way.
And that's Gipti Andopia with that report. You're still watching The Marketplace. We're going for a short break. We'll be right back with more stories. And you're welcome back. The former chief executive of the National Pensions Regulatory Authority is questioning the model of excessive borrowing by government to pay maturing debt, saying it is not a solution to debt management. According to Dr. Daniel Sedo, the country's debt position and continuous deficit financing remain a major problem to the economy. Here's more.
Speaking as one of the key guests at the UPSA Alumni Symposium on the 2021 budget, Dr. Sedo called on government to stop taking loans for consumption, but rather borrow to own productive assets. The event was graced by many alumni across the globe, including key personalities in both the public and private sector, in person or virtually. They shared perspectives on how to get the economy on a sound footing and create hope for the citizenry. Dr. Sedo said the country's economy should create employment through the utilization of productive assets.
A little contribution is that these are my productive areas, because if you look at the numbers critically, the borrowings are not in productive sectors. The borrowing, we are not sweating the borrowing well enough. And so because of that, the revenues that the borrowing should generate for us, they are not. And you see that we borrow to pay for maturing debt. And that in itself, we're only prolonging or delaying the effect that it will have on us. The world will not get easier anytime soon. It will be competitive, and we are not developing the human skills to even be competitive. We should be thinking of ventures that we can use our brains to do things and make a lot more money and then pay taxes to solve that. again, I would say we should be looking at our costs. The expenses we generate in doing things are just unsustainable, and that is serious. The borrowing we have to stop at a certain point in time.
For his part, Director General of the Internal Audit Agency, Dr. Eric Odruosai, said the 2021 budget failed to provide continuity plan towards economic recovery. According to him, the budget will rather overburden businesses than make economic gains.
Executive Director of Financial Literacy Foundation for Africa, Dr. Richmond Frimpong, entered up on the marketplace with some tips for us in terms of investment and finances. Here is our Money Lab.
Our budget highlight today on Money Lab is about the place of the second-tier pension. In the budget reading, there is a mandatory provision for the payment of Tier 2. But the policy is that a number of people, a number of employers are doing well with the Tier 1, but so many also are not paying the Tier 2 at all. The budget direction in there is that everyone who is paying Tier 1 and not paying Tier 2 is going to be taxed to do same. And so check if your employer is not contributing to your Tier 2. Check if you, the employer yourself, you are not paying Tier 2. Get your books in order before the government kicks up and chases you, because there is going to be an intense supervision to make sure that there is no lack or there is no outstanding numbers regarding the Tier 2 of your employees or the Tier 2 of the people you are working with. Same with you, the employee. If you know that your employer has not paid, begin to push them into this very highlight so that they regularize before the government comes after you.
And that's how we end the marketplace. I'm Charles Aite. Many thanks for watching.